Hey, what's good everybody? My name's Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today I've got a banger for a video for you to just do some really cool stuff within Serum that was never possible before in version 1. Obviously with the new update we've got some brand new engines, but something that is a little bit lesser known is that there's an auto slicer built in. So because of the ability to use the oscillator mapping along with the auto slicing, along with the clip launcher, along with some of the other features that I'm going to show you, you can do a little bit of sound design and then throw a bunch of loops in here and actually start to rearrange and recycle a bunch of things that maybe were from old abandoned projects, or some stems or some loops, or you know what I'm saying? Really anything that you want. And that's what we're going to explore in today's video. So if that seems interesting, it would be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of other content for Serum and other synths and stuff, but let me show you what we're working with first. So if we exit out of this, I've got a few different loops that'll play for you. This is going to be loud, so please mind you. Okay, cool. Cool. One thing I might do is I might just bounce that quickly so that way it'll be a little bit smaller. I've got some other stuff here. So quite a few different things to work with. We've got some music, we have some drums, we have a lot of different options to explore. And because of that, I'm going to just pretty much blow the lid off of what I'm about to show you, and we're about to have a lot of fun. Because it's not even, I guess you could say, like, yeah, you could definitely compose in this, but there's so much more that we could do with just a little bit of elbow grease. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set oscillator B and C to sample, and I'm going to find the drum group first. Toss this in here. Nice. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this and go to slice auto, and you'll see that this has created some chops. This is awesome because now this will be spread across the keyboard in a bunch of different ways over C1 to D3. And because of that, I don't know if it's going to be accurate with the way that it detects. You might have to, mess with it a little bit, but let's just play some of those and see what we can get. And that's fine, and we can actually work with that. So before we go any further, now that we've sliced this, we can open up the clip here, and I can find whatever that is. And I can start to go into this. And one of my favorite things that Steve Duda added was being able to turn the grid off, because now that I have this, I can kind of work within the confinements, or without the confinements of having something to be on time. I can move everything a little bit off and have a very natural type of how do you say, I guess, groove. And so now if we listen to this, sounds terrible, but it's great. I love it. But if we do this, where we move everything a little bit off, kind of like so, and then we have something to kind of anchor whatever the sound is. So let's just kind of keep that there. And we'll place this here to be the exact same around every time. So something here, maybe even something kind of like this. Push that a little bit late. Now this might sound a little bit better. So yeah, okay. Let's find that kick. So now what we can do is kind of set that, and we can kind of kind of just align this here, and now we've got a remixed beat, if you will. Sick. All right. So something with this is that we can kind of adjust some of the velocities if we want to. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to get to the fun stuff. But basically, because we have this, we've essentially remixed our drums, right? Well, this actually has some built-in stuff that makes it a lot of fun. So before I get into any of the other things with the other oscillators, we can kind of start having fun with this of making different placements of this and telling the playhead to do different things outside of the pattern that we have that it would normally play from left to right. So if I set this to reverse, let's just listen to this and you'll see what I'm saying. So that's a lot of fun. Yeah, we can set it to other things that might not be so crazy, but as you can see, there's a lot of play that we can kind of utilize with this, right? So within this, we can kind of do lots of different things. I still want to see what, if there's a different function that we can utilize here that can change the playhead. I haven't explored with it enough, but that would be really cool. But now that we understand that, we can start to utilize that to play with a lot of other things. For example, if we did this with the ARP, we might be able to get the same kind of, I guess, crazy wildness. And mind you, this is only with the drums. So once we get everything up in here, including the sub and all that stuff, which I'll cover here in just a second, we can essentially create a really fun song or a really fun arrangement just from having a blast, messing around with utter chaos. The only thing is that you got to get something in here, but if for whatever reason you could just go on Splice or whatever, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But check this out. We can maybe change the offset. Yeah. And so you can kind of see like this is a great way to essentially quote unquote remix whatever it is that you're doing, right? The other thing that we can do is we can also, sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but let's just kind of put the rest on the back burner for just a second and let's finish getting some other sounds in here for fun. So maybe something that we can do is mess around with some bass stuff. So I really like that first hit, so we'll take that, you know? And so we can right click this, go to slice to auto. And now what we want to do, because you can see that this is mapped to C1, is we want to take this and make sure that oscillator 3 is not going to overlap with whatever other stuff that we have. So even with this, I'm pretty sure that this is mapped to C1, so we'll take that off. Oscillator A is pretty empty, so maybe what we could do is map it to C0 or something else of the sort. For me personally, I would probably try to move. Yeah, that would be fine. Maybe I'll try to play something with an octave here and then move the neuro stuff to C5 and above, or maybe even C6. But with the sub, we kind of want to keep this maybe just for the sake of, you know, making it usable to here. So now you can see that we don't have any overlap, but this means that we've spread out our engines across the key mapping, oscillator mapping or whatever, in a way that they're never going to overlap with each other. So if we turn the sub on and we play something that's super low, you know, then we can go back into the clip and we can kind of just start to play stuff along the same lines of maybe where those kicks are, right? So even if we keep it super simple, we can kind of do something kind of like this. I think these are on the A, so something kind of like that. Boom. And then maybe we can do another one just kind of right there. So now we should actually have added a bass. So Great. Now this is cool because, hey, I really like this sub, but I need to add effects to it, or I want to do something to it that's going to make it more than what it is. Well, it's not the most robust, but something that we can do is we can go back in the oscillator and say, all right, we're going to send this to bus 1. And now we will kind of start adding effects here just on that bus 1 to where whatever is on this is only going to affect the sub, or like this is our bass racker, I guess, or something, right? We don't need to go crazy with it because, again, I kind of just want this to be understood as a concept and not necessarily like, hey, this is the new way to make music or whatever, because it's more complicated than it probably should be. But now that we've added a little bit of tube distortion and kind of kept this with the low pass, we can even adjust this if we want to. Essentially, we've created a sub. So So that's interesting, but the problem with this is that maybe I don't want this to be consistent like that. Maybe I want this to kind of be a little bit individualized. So what I would do is maybe set this to envelope 4 because this has a hold. And I like to use this with 808s because it will hold it for a bit and then drop it out. So if we go to this perhaps and give it a little bit of decay, we can set this to 0 and then add this here. So that way, whenever this triggers, it'll kind of do its own thing whenever this is being held, right? So now let's see if that will play. So sick. Cool. So now that we've got the other stuff in here, we can start to mess around with other textures, right? Because once we get to C5, I believe, maybe we might need to go back into this and go root note. Yeah, that's at C1. So let's go to C5. And then we can go back into our clip here and start to do something very simple, kind of like this. And now we've got a little bit of texture here. So the only thing that I really like in this is that last sound, which is pretty cool. Actually, that one, sorry. So we can kind of just do something like this. So maybe at the end of that, we can kind of have something very simple. And then we can kind of just mess around with, a stupid call and response while we're messing with this. So And so, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this because there is that. But the other thing that's really interesting is that now that we have, a couple of ideas within this, we can start to utilize all of the processing that we have on this. So let's take away the sample for a bit and let's just play the clip. We can start to mess with the scan. We can start to mess with the distortion, the FM. So we could, you know, make it RM to itself. Maybe not to itself. Actually, we can go right click and then go to mod source, go oscillator, oscillator C. You know, and just do weird stuff like that. We can also change this from a sample to a spectral. We can create a spectral filter. We can move this around. We can change this to some of the other cool stuff on here. This is the only one that's active, so I thought that I would give that a shot and kind of just mess with this because I don't know what's going to happen. So, but we can do other stuff, you know. Sorry. That's pretty crazy. Right? And within this stuff, you know, you can also send this to something, say, like filter 2. So if I go here and I go to filter and I do this, like, who's to say that I don't open this up, send this to bus 2? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Yeah, send this to bus 2, and then we have some other kind of crazy filter, which I'm not going to get too far into, but we start building a custom shape here, right? And we start doing weird stuff kind of like this, where it's like, oh, hold on a second, what's going on? You know, even if it's just this and we start messing around with other things on here, like if I change this to sample and hold, and then I'm like, hey, check this out. I don't know what this is going to do, but we'll set this to retrigger and hit this one. Wild. You know what I mean? And now we've got just this stupid loop or whatever that kind of created something a little bit different. And maybe the rest of this stuff isn't there, but I can quickly audition this with a different drum group and be like, I'm kind of working on this and I don't really know how this is going to sound, but I can all keep it within the confinements of something like Serum. So I can be like, all right, well, you know, let's play that again and see what this sounds like together. You know, I could even be like, all right, well, that was cool, but I can be like, da, 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 you know. Oh, God, straight out of a horror movie. You know, Thomas the Train type beat, you know what I'm saying? And we can kind of experiment with all different kinds of stuff. And what's even cooler is that, let's say we don't want to use the sub or whatever, we can actually set this to be either something musical or something completely abstract, or we can use this as a wild card and be like, all right, I'm going to take everything that I just heard and we're going to change this to spectral again. And I'm just going to resample what we just, like, it's only going to be a couple of things here, right? Because it's whatever's on the first note, but you can see that it's got a bunch of different sounds in here. And so because of that, if we turn this stuff off and go back into our oscillator mapping here to wherever this is, so C4, 2, 3. Now we've got some crazy shit to work with, right? So what even is this? So Looks like a, yeah, it looks like a kick with some other stuff. Yeah, so we can kind of do some stuff like that. We can mess with the granular engine of that, and we can kind of just get lost within our own sound design thing. And again, you can take this into like as deep as you want it to go, or you can keep it to be as chill as you want it to be. But I mean, we've been covering new features, and I'm already at least like what, 20, 30 minutes into this video. And you can kind of just keep bouncing, or you can replace this. And what's also really cool and interesting to think about is while you can keep these two and resample into this, like if you keep bouncing stuff out either with rolling sampler or whatever, and you keep tossing it into this workflow, you know, I do think that eventually at some point you're going to stumble upon something cool. The one thing that I would say is, you know, I guess try to get everything in key, because whatever neurobase this was in at the time, I'm not really sure what key it was in, but I think that it still proved an interesting point. But just know that like you can either have something on here that has your bass, your drums, a sub if you want to, a wildcard sample, or you can even do something that's as, you know, wild as, oh God, sorry. You could even do something that's as wild as telling this to go into something like filter 1. This is going to main, that's going to filter 2. Then when you go into the effects, the oscillator A will go into bus 1. Actually, no, you want filter 1 to go into bus 1. And now you can set up an individual effect chain that's only going to go into that. Or I'm sorry, it would probably need to be bus 2 because we've already utilized the first one. So there's a lot to pay attention to, unfortunately, which is kind of annoying. But at the same time, if you kind of get it right and you focus on, you know, building something one step at a time, then you end up getting some pretty cool results that could be a lot of fun to kind of just, you know, mess with as a means of like getting out of your creative space that everything has to be on a DAW and you got to put an EQ on everything and it needs to be blah, 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 whatever. It's more of, oh, let me smash these sounds together and then start to process them through these quick effects and see what comes out on the other side. I think that's the best way that I can put everything in a concise little neat package. So I'm thinking about in the future maybe releasing a preset pack that will be smaller. It'll be cheaper for sure. But maybe what I'll do is I'll have like a neurobase thing. I'll have some drums that are already pre-mapped, and maybe I'll have some patterns on here for you that you can kind of mess with and get into exploring with all different kinds of effects and stuff. And then maybe, you know, maybe I can like make one thing an actual neurobase or an actual pluck. I don't really know. I'm open-minded, but let me know what you think in the comments if that's something that you would maybe be willing to pay like $15 for a set of 10, and I'd include all the samples and stuff, since that would be a lot of work. But that's kind of where my head's at for creating serum packs for this, and I wanted to make sure that, yeah, that you heard it from me first. So thanks everybody, I appreciate it. And if you want to check my sounds out right now, you can check out all my phase plant, Bitwig, Ableton things at alchemy.com. That's also where my music is. And or Discult Records, I've got an EP on there. I don't really have anything else. Thanks everybody, appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.